So, welcome to all of you spiritual warriors, entrepreneurs, and light workers out there. I am beyond excited to introduce my mate Lindsay to you today. This is the 50 Entrepreneurs in 50 Days Abundance Mission. Lindsay, from the first day I met because you actually talked to me, and I mean, look at you. I know that you're amazing, but that's not really what makes you amazing. It's your intelligent mind. You're an amazing work that you're doing, and the way that you are inspiring women online with your leadership. So I know about you, Lindsay, but why don't you tell my audience exactly what you do?
Absolutely, and thank you for that really kind and generous introduction. Well, I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I specialize working with children and adolescents and adults in individual therapy. And then I also do psychological evaluations. I live in Tampa, Florida, and I own a group practice here where we help a significant amount of people in Tampa to be able to give them hope, and peace and work through any struggles that they have in their life. So that's me.
Amazing, giving people hope. Why do you think people need hope these days, Lindsay?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I created this practice was really to help people find hope. It's one of the reasons people do come to therapy is they've either lost hope in themselves, they've lost hope in their family system, maybe it's broken, needs to be brought back together. There's a lot of things that are bringing us down these days. There's financial difficulties, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of people fighting against and within even their families. So I do think that being able to give people hope, it's almost like giving them some kind of power to be able to kind of regain their lives and continue to live in a really healthy and happy way. And so I think it's incredibly important. I have a great book in our reading area called Hope Rising, and people often pick it up and say, just a couple minutes with that book really helped me because hope is a powerful motivator for change. And so I find that people are in a pretty dark place when they don't have hope. So being able to give them back again. And when I see people sit here for a first session and they leave saying, gosh, I feel so much more hopeful than when I came in, I think it's pretty powerful and exciting. And they can look at their life and their future in a different way.
Wow, I didn't know you had a book. How remiss of me. What is the name of the book again, please?
No, not mine necessarily. It's not mine, but it's called Hope Rising. It's a
Hope
different author, but it's really, really powerful about the absolute motivating factor that is hope. It's so, so, so crucial and important for us as our life and when we have ships. So not mine yet. I would love to write a book in the future, but I'm not quite there yet, but it's a great book nonetheless.
Well, I hope you write a book because I'll show it to the world, mate. I'll show it to the entire world. So so what
I
makes
will let you know.
so what makes your work anything that makes your work different to other psychologists, Lindsay, or that makes it unique or that you see as unique in what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is really important to stand out and be different. I think there's a lot of therapists in the area and a lot of people, that others could choose. And so for us, I do strive to be different. And it really does come from our mission and our core values. We're very client centered. So it's really important for me to personalize therapy. So every single person that comes in, we're really talking about the changes they need to make in their life, what their goals are for their life. And something else that we love to do as well is collaborate with other people in their lives. So, for example, like a child comes in and is struggling in school, it's so important for me to be able to stay connected to their school, maybe stay connected with their pediatrician, even and their families, so that we can be almost like a support team for the child, as opposed to the parents having to work through each system. So I do think collaboration is incredibly important. Being client centered and authentic is very important. And I am happy to say a lot of clients will say they feel they feel how important this work is to me. It's not just a job, it's something I live and breathe and exude to the new clients that I meet. And so that's an important factor too. It is authentic. This comes from within. This is more of a mission that's been placed on my life as opposed to just a job. And so I like people to leave and feel like they're in the right place with the right people to be able to help them. And like I said about the hope factor, I want them to leave even the very first session feeling like they have more hope than they came in with. And so when I have a first call with a client, I'm explaining all of that to them. This is a calling. This is a very important to me. And I think you'll find from the first session on that we are serious about being able to help you, and we will take your hand and guide you through this process. You're not alone. And so it starts from the first phone call to when somebody leaves. And I do think, even though that might sound common, it's not. It's not. I hear a lot of complaints for people coming in from other therapists. So we do try to be different in our space, be even more authentic, even more communicative with people. Just that much extra, care and concern for the people that are walking in our doors.
That's really amazing that you're engaging with people's children's, parents' children's pediatricians, their school. That's not common. And how do I know?
Mhm.
Because I've been through 1,000,001 psychologists. Let's be honest, everyone thinks I'm crazy, okay? And they're probably right, Lindsay. Do you know what I mean? They're probably right. But is that what your secret sauce is then? Hope? Is it hope? Or
Say, yeah, hope and authenticity. I think that that's probably our secret sauce, and honestly, a real dedication to seeing change happen. This is another complaint, that when people come in, they might say, I saw another therapist, I saw him for an extended time, but I don't know what actually changed or happened. I don't want that ever to be the case with me. So I make sure that we can measure their progress as well. So we all do this, actually, all the therapists that are in here. We will use certain assessment scales to be able to see where somebody is when they come in their symptoms. And then we check that periodically so that we can physically and objectively measure the progress that they're making so that they know and we know. And if they're not making the progress, we're able to have kind of checkpoints to go, okay, so what I wonder what had either happened. And what I explain to clients is it keeps me accountable for my work too, because I am here to help you make a positive change in your life. And so if I'm saying that to you and I'm expressing it and you're making an investment in therapy, I want to make sure that that's happening. And by doing some of these objective assessments, I do think that people can actually see the results occurring, or we can have a checkpoint to say what's not working and we can talk about it and be intentional about it. And I don't think enough therapists do that or take that part seriously.
I absolutely believe you because sometimes I've sat there in therapy and look, I think therapy is great for everyone. I think self-work is really important. Just being able to talk to someone, more
Absolutely.
impartial is really important. But sometimes I sat there and thought, you know what, man, like you're just asking me questions so I try and work this out myself, aren't you? And at the same time, you're learning about me. It's like. But I mean, I'm not really here to solve my own problems. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
And
I
I'm
know
here because I
ultimately,
need
it's about me, but like, give me
to.
something here. Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
anyway,
And I think you bring up a good point too, is that people should leave with real practical tools for change, and so I do explain the difference that there's more of like a process therapy when someone comes in and they just kind of want to process, like kind of what you're talking about. More people come in because they want change to occur in some area of their life, one or more areas. And so most of us here do cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an action-oriented therapy. It's meant to be more short term, not long term, but you should walk away with new skills and new tools on how to manage and handle your emotions better. And so you are exactly right that I think that's an important part too, is to be given tools and skills to be able to help you, because you're coming in, you've tried to help yourself, right? You've tried to talk to support people in your life, and somehow you got stuck. And so I see us as someone that does need to help and guide and give you those tools as well. So I think what you said is important, that you should leave with something tangible to be able to put together in your life to make the change happen too.
yeah, CBT, I have some experience with it. reframing thoughts and things. It's like reframing thoughts, right? God, I got to go back to
Yeah.
to my books, but I did a 12-week course on that. I found
Hmm.
it really beneficial till I stopped applying it, which is weird, right? But you stop
Yeah,
applying
that
the thing.
happens. That,
So what do you do when people just stop applying
mhm.
those skills? Do you know what I mean? You give them what they need and then they stop applying them.
Well, I think, that would be kind of a twofold answer because if they're still seeing me and they're not applying it, then we might need to take a different approach because it's not one size fits all. So I could be teaching coping skills, they might apply them, it might be working for a bit, and then maybe it doesn't work. And so we either need to relearn the skills and apply them in a different way, or we need to take a different approach. And so I think as therapists, we do need to be flexible and adaptable, to any situation and just have that understanding that we don't need to keep shoving the same thing down. We don't need to keep getting the same information over and over. We need to make sure that it is effective for our client. So does that make sense? So just really
Absolutely.
checking in with them. And then the other thing is if somebody leaves, so I just had this experience, I have it all the time where someone has come to therapy, they've been with me for a bit, they've resolved some challenges, they leave successfully, but then they come back because they need some more maintenance work. And so that happens all the time. That just happened to me this week. I had a returning client after a year. After one session, I'm happy to say they've already started making those changes again because they had them. They had the tools and skills from the last time. They just needed a little gentle reminder and they started putting them back into their life and they're already seeing change happen again. So it's also okay to come back in, and just have some maintenance sessions to touch up on your skills again.
Awesome. Do you show them those little graphs and stuff like, about their
Yeah.
progress?
All the time. Yep, all the time. So if I'm working with a child or adolescent, I'll have them do one and their parent because sometimes their parents see things differently than they're experiencing things. So it really creates good conversations on are we really working towards the right goals? So for example, a parent might see high, negative behaviors when really the kiddo has significant anxiety. So the parents might say behavior on the kiddos, it might say anxiety. We go, oh, okay. So their anxiety is causing them to become so stressed that they're trying to control situations and those kind of things. So those can really help get a baseline of functioning, like where their starting point is with their symptoms, but then also catch things that maybe they didn't bring up in the initial session. And then we can recreate our goals from there.
Sorry, just something occurred to me about that. Oh, yeah, this is what it is. Um, I speak crazy, I go for a walk each morning, well, most mornings, my little dog Socks down to the park. And I came across a guy, he saw me praying, actually, and he came over. Um, and we got chatting, right? And I found out he was a Christian as well. I'm like a, I'm like a mix Christian. Do you know what I mean? That's as much as I'll say. But I really connected with this guy, and we were speaking. And I've connected with some Christians in my life recently, Lindsay, that just seem to be sent literally from God to me. But recently, especially. Um, they got talking to this guy about his son and his son's got anxiety and that's one of the things in my relationship I didn't deal well with when it happened to a significant other in my life. It was that first of all I didn't really get it. Do you know what I mean? I didn't get the anxiety. It's like and people have that tendency. Well, do you know what I mean? I know how bad it was now, but to say just get up, get out of bed, like, what are you doing? Like, tell people, Lindsay, how to deal with someone with anxiety in a safe manner, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anxiety is something a lot more people are dealing with these days. I would say it's one of the number one, I would say, diagnoses that walks in the door is anxiety. And so one of the first steps to changing anxiety, or really honestly any behavior, is to first become aware that you have it anyways. So to become aware that you have anxiety, but then so in therapy where we start is we start becoming more aware of our automatic negative thoughts And then the second step is to start shifting and changing, like you had said before, reframing negative thoughts to make them more positive or realistic. And so I use examples like with little kiddos when they're afraid of something that's not actually real. We talk about, where's the evidence for this and where is not the evidence for this. So we go through different strategies in order to help them, number one, understand and identify the thoughts that are causing them anxiety. So with cognitive behavioral therapy, there's this triangle that I show people often. On the top are your thoughts, then your feelings, and then your actions. So if your thoughts are saying, like, I'm not good enough and no one likes me, for example. And so when I go to school, I'm very anxious because I think nobody likes me and I'm not good enough. So that creates anxiety when I go into school. So then my behavior is then to isolate. And then I don't have any friends because I'm isolating. That reinforces the thought at the top that I'm alone, no one likes me. And so we work with them to say, okay, so what is the evidence? Or who does like you? And we start to reframe and shift their thought process. Once we do that, that actually we do have people that like us and we do have people that talk to us and we are a good person with skills and abilities, then that starts to naturally shift your feelings. So I always tell people that feelings are followers. They follow after what our thoughts are telling them to feel. And so really with anxiety, we have to focus more on our thoughts than the physical anxiety. We actually have to focus on what our thoughts are telling us that's causing that anxiety. And then when we are working with anxiety, we also need practical skills, like I told you, to calm our body and our physical reaction to the anxiety as well, so that we can function on a day-to-day better. And so I think it's multifaceted, learning skills and abilities to shift and change and reframe your thoughts, learning skills and abilities to calm your body when you do have anxiety or you do have a panic attack. And that will overall help your behaviors and your output. So I don't know if that helps, but it's really understanding kind of the triggers and your automatic thoughts that create the anxiety, and then learning some of the different things and skills and abilities to calm your body down when you have it, because anxiety can produce racing thoughts, negative thoughts, and illogical thoughts a lot of times. I was talking to somebody today about that. Is it a real thought or is it an illogical thought? Or, that's leading to your fear.
Amazing reply, and that did answer my question. But just to go a little bit deeper, what about
Yeah.
someone who is dealing with someone who has anxiety and it's at that level where it's like they're scared of walking out of the house?
Right.
They've got that and it's just come out of nowhere. Like it's come out
Yeah,
of nowhere. And,
absolutely.
you're like, I don't understand what's going on. I don't know what you're scared of because you've never seen that part of someone.
Right, absolutely. And it's so interesting because we can be triggered by things that are very obvious to us, and we could be triggered by things that are not so obvious to us. But those thoughts start accumulating, which then causes our fears to get worse and worse if we don't attack them and we just allow them to sit there and become more real to us. And so, one of the most loving things that you could do for someone is to help them get support, and I think one thing that's hard, even in relationships, is that we want to help the person that we love so much, but we're not a psychologist. We're not a therapist. And so once it hits to a certain level, then it's out of your league in a way, So very, very loving thing to do is to gently encourage somebody to get help, and that you will help them find that help. They don't have to do it alone, but let's do some research to be able to help you find a good support person. If it's not the first person, that's fine. The most important is you find a really good connection with somebody, And so for me, I had someone in my family recently that I encouraged to get some support, and I very gently brought this up. It's hard as a therapist myself to say that to someone, even in my own family, because I don't want them to think I'm labeling them or whatnot, but I do know how helpful therapy can be. So I sat down with them and we went through some different therapist profiles in their area together. And we just talked about, which one do you think might be a good fit for you? Do you want to reach out to all of them and see what their responses are? So I honestly feel like just partnering with them to be able to help find support is one of the most loving things you can do. Also, just letting them talk about it and try to get it out, helping them to breathe when they're really anxious or upset or having a panic attack, breathing with them. So if you're able to learn some of the skills and abilities and tools to help them, that's great. but it is the most effective if they can learn and apply them themselves.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to keep pushing the topic, but I mean, these are amazing things that you're giving me, Lindsay. But what about someone who's like anxiety? That doesn't even seem like that bad a thing. Like, oh, we've got manic depression and bipolar and, BPSD or whatever it is, and PTSD and this and that and that. And people might think, oh, anxiety um, doesn't seem all that bad. Like, and they might not be able to understand fully, like, like I'm starting to know a lot more and more people that have anxiety, and because I've had some, when I get anxiety, I have, extreme stress anxiety, but the way that I deal with anxiety is to get wide-eyed and feel backed into a corner and fight hard. Like that's,
Yeah,
other people just shut down, and I
right.
just don't think, with all the stuff out there, like that's how I thought. I'm like, anxiety. Oh, well, that's one of the less problems in the world. Like, that's so
Mhm.
unhealthy when you're trying to help someone or be
Mhm.
supportive of someone. What do you say to people like, how do you kind of can you unwrap that a little bit? How to, how bad is anxiety?
Yeah.
And you know, how to, why do people kind of, or is it just me that kind of says,
Mhm.
thinks about, mental health and things that are bad about mental health and then thinks about anxiety and puts it on the lower level of the rung?
I think it's a misunderstanding of anxiety. Now, I think if someone hasn't experienced it in a significant or severe way, it's absolutely hard to understand. And I don't think it's just anxiety in that sense. Depression is the same. I hear a lot of people say, I don't understand why they're sad. They've got a great life. Doesn't make sense to me. Well, if you haven't been depressed, then it's really hard to understand the experience of somebody else that's depressed, that seemingly has a great life and everything together. So going back to anxiety, something that a lot of people don't understand is that there is a biological response to stress. Anxiety, there is a natural response of anxiety. We all have a level of it within us, and it's there to alert us to potential danger. And so that's where the fight or flight response comes in, is that it's there to alert us to potential danger. So there's a certain level of anxiety that is actually healthy. There's a level that can propel us to leave a dangerous situation. When your fight or flight response goes off and all of a sudden the adrenaline kicks in, you need to fight the situation or leave from the situation. The challenge that people are having is anxiety is becoming so big that it becomes unhealthy, and can be very, very hurtful to somebody. And so if they deal with it for too long of a time, and like I said, increase those fears and those worries, then it's much harder to manage and deal with than when it's kind of that smaller issue there. And so in short bursts, anxiety can be kind of helpful to us. Like, say, I have a test tomorrow, I'm a little anxious about it, and the anxiety causes me to study more. That would be a productive and healthy level of anxiety. But when it's chronic, when it's overwhelming, when there's problems are not so easy to solve, or significant triggering situations, it can become very detrimental. And not only that, it can impact you physically. So anxiety can absolutely give you a physical response. It almost makes it impossible to move past it, because when you're talking about high heart rate, nausea, not feeling well, headaches, stomach aches, all the physical responses that can come with anxiety, it can take people out of work. It can stop people from leaving their house. I've seen it happen before when it grows to be so big. So there's physical strains, there's emotional strains, there's relationship difficulties. So I don't see anxiety as a small thing. I do see it as a pretty significant issue that when it gets out of hand and out of control, someone does need additional help to be able to work through it. So if they notice it at the kind of entry level where, okay, I'm having some anxiety, I don't know what's going on, it's impacting me every day. That's at the beginning and the starting point, that's the easiest time to kind of work through it. But again, chronic, overwhelming anxiety for a long period of time, that's going to grow, and that's when you really need a professional to step in and help guide you through that experience.
Yep, beautiful. Um, there's a lot of Okay, so let's move on from anxiety. But thank you. That's a really great answer, Lindsay. And
Yeah.
I don't
And
want
I
to.
do want to say, yeah, one more thing about anxiety I think is important because you mentioned it with not leaving the house is a lot of times anxiety, you want to avoid the situation that caused you distress, right? So we don't like to be in distress, just as humans in general. And so when you can avoid something that causes you distress, then you feel better. And so, for example, if a kiddo is getting stressed or about going to school, they stay home that day, they feel better. Uh-oh, now we possibly have a negative behavior starting because they realize when they stay home from school, they feel better. So, one hallmark feature of anxiety is avoidance. And so, one of the coping mechanisms is to confront. One of the most effective treatments for anxiety is exposure and response prevention, where you're continuously exposing yourself to the stressful thing until it no longer is so stressful anymore. So it's a gradual process. And so when somebody does have super high anxiety, we do have to kind of take it step by step to help them through the situation as well. But I just wanted to mention the avoidance factor too, which might cause someone, like you had said, to not want to leave a house anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I just read a book, guys. Like, don't go and tell your wife or a significant other or your child to just get up and get on with it, right? That's not
Mhm.
how it works, right? Read a book, educate yourself, go to Chat GPT, and then find someone like Lindsay to to work her magic. So what's your take on the self-help book crowd, Lindsay? The ones who say, why pay for therapy when I can just read a bestseller and fix myself?
Absolutely. And I don't think it's terrible. I think that if you are a motivated individual and you are used to helping yourself, a lot of different areas of your life, you're hyper independent and depending on, again, those like level of symptoms and things you're experiencing, self-help books can be really great for motivation and new ideas. Like you said, you just said it, read a book, learn and apply it. And so I do think a lot of people can do that. I think therapy, though, it brings in the personalization piece. So if I read a book, it's talking in generalities. And so then you're trying to kind of pull the pieces out from your life to be able to apply them to what the book's telling you. So if that works, great. But if it doesn't, therapy provides the personal response. So you come in and say, these are my significant challenges I'm having, and how can you help me with these specific challenges? And so it's a lot more personal. You have a person that's guiding you and helping you and supporting you. And it's very much a collaborative process than you trying to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, especially with
So
people like
that's what
ADD like me, where I'm like, yeah, meditation, a self-help, this, that, CBT, like learning, neuro linguistic programming, I'll read this next, and then just not getting help and just you're just getting worse and worse. And it's like it's something that really stuck with me that my mentor told me. He said, Rory, because I said, what's the one thing that the one quote you subscribe to when I was interviewing him? He said, knowledge isn't power. Do you know what I mean? Knowledge is not power unless you have someone who can. It's great if you're doing all this stuff, right? Doing meditations, learning stuff, watching YouTube videos, educating yourself, looking into spirituality, looking into God, reading the Bible, doing all this stuff, manifestation, all this stuff, right? But unless you have someone to kind of lead the way for you, it can actually make you worse. Yeah. So
you bring up a good point too that, when you have a book, you don't have the support and you also don't have the accountability. So one thing people ask is why is therapy this consistent thing you have to keep doing? It's not like a one-stop shop. You're not gonna get everything in one session, and it's because part of it is accountability. When I'm educating someone on cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm giving them the tools and then I'm expecting them to use them. And so I think a lot of people could read a book, apply it, have no problem, keep applying it. But when someone comes back in a week and I say, I know you had a busy week, but were you able to practice deep breathing at night before you went to sleep? Oh, no, I didn't do it. Okay, so what's our homework going to be this week? All right, I'm going to practice the deep breathing before I go to sleep. Okay, great. Good. So then I'll see you again next week, and there's more to it than that in the session, but the accountability comes with it too. So you really do have a person that's next to you going, I want this for you as much as you want it for yourself. But you do have to do some of these steps at home in order to make that change process happen. It's not just going to happen here. And so again, if you're strong enough to do that outside of the session, you read a book and you just, you apply the skills and you keep them going, that's great. But sometimes I feel like more lasting change happens this way, by being guided and directed and helped, supported, and an accountability piece as well.
You're blowing my mind with your intelligence, Lindsay. And yes, well, I can't believe you think you're not a good speaker. Ridiculous. Anyway, so
My real one-on-one.
so what about the people who say, look, I've tried everything, nothing works. How do you inspire them and give therapy one more shot? What would you say to someone
No,
like
absolutely. Yeah, and I can understand the frustration in that because it happens all the time. I have people that say, I've been to 3 different therapists. This is my last stop. What's going to be different this time? And so it isn't, like I said, a one size fits all solution. So maybe it wasn't a good therapeutic match. Maybe it wasn't a good approach. And so, because different therapists have different approaches that they use, maybe that approach wasn't right for their situation. And so it doesn't mean it was bad. It's just maybe they needed something that was a little bit different because not all the tools and skills are going to work for everybody. And so I do ask them when they come in and they've had that experience, and I can see it on their face that how is this next person going to help me more than the last person? I ask them to trust me. I let them know how long I've been doing this, and I ask them to just give me a couple sessions to prove that we can start the change process. Just a couple sessions. So I don't say this is going to be it, because the first time they come in, they're nervous, they've got their guard up, they're kind of looking everything over to see if this is really going to work. And so that's not the most effective session you can have, but coming in that second time, that's when it's on me to start doing the work for them. So I do just ask them to give me a chance, come back in, let's see if there's a difference. I explain the process very clearly. I want to answer every single question and every single fear that they have before they leave that first day. And then I ask them to give me another shot to come in the next week and see if we can really get this change started.
wow? Okay. We don't have too much time left, Lindsay. But I have just one more thing to add to that, right? So
Yeah,
I see this commonly. I see this commonly now. Um,
yeah.
you know, one partner's going to therapy, right? One partner's
Mhm.
working on themselves. They're doing all this self work. They're going to therapy. And the other partner just doesn't subscribe to it, doesn't believe in it, and starts creating friction in the relationship. And the thinking of like, oh, well, I'm working on myself. I'm working on myself. You're not doing anything on yourself. Like I know that that's not healthy for either individual, right? So,
Mhm.
especially from the one who's doing all the self work, because it just looks like, what do you say to the person who's doing the self work, who feels like their partner should be doing a bit too, but that's just
Yeah.
a real wall for them?
Yeah.
How would you approach something like that? Yeah, what would you talk? How would you speak to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've had that in my own life. And then I've also sat with people that have experienced the same. And I get that question too. How do I approach some of these things and these new skills and tools I'm learning? And if I tell them, that might push them back versus bring them to me. And I'm learning and growing and they're not, that's very common. So it's a really good question to ask. And so there's kind of several things to that. But one is, when you go and then you start talking about the things that you're doing, like say you go home after session and you're super inspired, just make it about you, like make it about what you are learning, because I think your growth and your change can just naturally inspire the other person. But when we come and, we come home and say, well, I'm learning this and you're not, that's obviously going to be a tough pill to swallow. And no matter what, change happens the best when somebody walks in the office and they want the change to happen for themselves. So again, if you're a partner that wants the change and someone else that's resisting the change, to tell the other person that they need it is not necessarily going to be helpful. But you making the changes you need and them seeing the positive progress on their own, just by you focusing on you, it could take time. I'm not saying it's going to happen right away, but could inspire them and could encourage them with you just doing self work. So self work's never, it's never wrong. That's another misconception people have is I need to go to therapy because I have a problem. A lot of people come to therapy for self improvement and just because there's certain things that they want to learn on their own. They want to increase their self awareness, as opposed to solve an identified problem. And so, again, a lot of times the resistance is either I don't need the help or a misunderstanding of the therapeutic process in general. So, kind of keeping that in mind. So, I think talking openly with them about what you're going through and what you're experiencing and your progress. And again, focusing on you. I think something else is being patient, just being patient with them, hearing them, and then maybe taking that into your own session and then asking how can I best help and support my partner through this if they never ever walk through a therapeutic door, if they never do, how can I help and guide and support them? And so kind of finding some tools and skills again for you to be able to help and encourage and support, because again, the change factor is going to be best if they identify that they need the help, even if there's skills and tools and things that you're learning that you're practicing, and maybe you ask them, hey, you know what, I'm going to do some deep breathing, I just learned it today, I'm going to go through this like 30-minute process. Do you want to do that with me? Or if not, I'm just going to be in the other room doing it. So it's kind of like tossing it to them, but as opposed to telling them they need to or they should. Does that make sense? And then finally, one of the things that I've also found really effective is encouraging couples therapy or couple sessions. And so even though it's not theirs, couples therapy could help at least bring them in to say, we are both working on things. And then through that process, kind of trusting the therapist to be able to identify if one or both need individual help too. So sometimes encouraging couples therapy can at least get both people in the door at the same time. And then if they need individual from there, sometimes they can be more open to it.
Such amazing advice. Be the change, right? Show
Mhm.
them the change, make them
Yeah.
want to change. Um, in anything in
Mhm.
life, in selling, in anything, right? You can't tell people what to do.
Mhm.
Just doesn't work from my
Yeah.
opinion and from my experience. All right, Lindsay.
Mhm.
Couple more questions. We're not going to get through all these because I have to take my daughter to basketball. We're running out of time, and I would
Yeah.
sit here all day with you. But so let's move on. What's the most I don't know if some of these you can even speak to, so tell me if we need to move on. But what's the most unforgettable
Yeah.
story of a client who came in completely shattered but left with their life changed forever? And how did that transformation happen?
I try not to be too specific, right? Because of it, um, and I could probably make it a little bit more global, but I really love working with adolescents, sitting down and understanding that they have two different paths in front of them sometimes. They have this path that could take them on a very, very, very dark trajectory for their life, or they have this path where they can go through and meet all of their dreams and goals and visions. So I do remember distinctly sitting down several years ago with an adolescent boy, and we were having that talk. There was a lot of things that had happened in his life that were not his fault. It was based on the people around him and things that they were going through that was impacting his life. But that was in turn making him very angry and very frustrated. And so that was then presented by schoolwork not being very good, fighting at school. There was just a lot of negativity that came with that anger that he was experiencing. And so when it came to me, he was not open to therapy whatsoever. They were having him come in, but he didn't want to be there. And I had one of those kind of come to Jesus talks with him to say, hey, this is your choice. I don't want you to necessarily be here. If you don't want to be here, I don't want to force you to be here. This therapy is not a consequence. Therapy is a gift and it's available for the people that need it and want it. It's available for people that don't as well. However, change will happen faster if you're open to it. So I let him know it is okay to walk out that door and not come back. It's okay. But I see this pathway difference in front of you right now. If you keep going down this path of anger, frustration, fighting, poor grades, what's on the other side of that? Where do you think that ends? But what my experience of you is I think you're incredibly smart. I think you're very respectful. You've been respectful since you walked in my door. And I just find you to be a really fascinating, wonderful individual with so many different strengths. And so I see this other trajectory where you could meet, again, all of your goals and dreams and do what you want in life. And why would you let other people's decisions stop you from making that happen? These aren't even decisions you made, they're decisions other people made. And once you're 18 out of the house, you're able to start making your own decisions for your life. And that's not too far away. So, will you give me the opportunity to work with you? And so it was a no. And then a couple months later, they called back and they said, you know what? It resonated. He wants to come see you, but he wants it once a month. I'm like, okay. So he came in once a month for a bit. And then he started coming every other week. And then he started coming once a week. So we kind of did the reverse of what do I typically do in sessions. We worked together for 2 years and I saw him graduate, go on to do amazing things. But that moment was really, really important to him. And I'll never forget it because I was very bold with him to say some of these things to somebody I had only recently met. But I just had this intense desire to really kind of lay out the paths in front of him and say, I will walk through this with you. This is hard. It's not fair. It isn't. And really validated and heard, what he was going through. I think more so than a lot of people did. And I saw him through the anger and I saw him through the negative behaviors. And we did really, really great work together. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it because I do feel like he was right on the edge of going on this dark path and he completely changed everything. And I would say all credit goes to him for coming back in the door and being willing and open to make that change. But sometimes it's just somebody offering it very openly without the expectation that you have to. I wanted him to have the option, the option of saying yes or the option of saying no. And so I think that was more powerful than saying, all right, you're here, let's get to work. Your parents said you had to be here and you're going to be here and we're going to, start today. I don't think that was going to be effective for him at all and probably make him a little bit more angry. And a goal that I have a lot of times with people too, so people that maybe don't want to come in or have a hard time coming in, is I want to leave them with a good experience. If it's just one session or even one phone call from the intake process, I want to leave them with a good impression of therapy so that they will be open to coming back, even if it's not me, someone else in the future, that they'll be open to coming back when they need it. So that was an effective, it was some effective work that we did. And I was really proud of it and really happy to see him go through and do all the things he wanted to do.
Incredible. Incredible. And then I just have just one witty little question for you at the end here, Lindsay. Let me pick one here because
Yeah.
all right. Uh, we have a few options here, and I like to finish with a bit of a laugh. Okay. Let's say you had to describe therapy to a 5-year-old in 10 words or less. How would you do it without terrifying them?
Well, the youngest client I've worked with is 5, so that's perfect. And so I let them know that we're here to talk about their feelings, and I'm going to be able to help them be able to understand their feelings better so that they feel better. And so I say I'm a talking doctor. I don't have any medicine. I don't have any shots. It's not like that. I always try to take the doctor away as soon as possible for like a 5 and 6-year-old because they identify it with a medical doctor. Say, you can call me Miss Lindsay. It's completely fine. We're going to play some games and we're going to do some activities that are going to help you feel better because your parent told me, this is hard for you, whatever the thing is that's hard for you. And I'm here just to help you. And so just very simple, very on their language and something that's easy for them to understand and grab hold of. And because kiddos that age are so resilient, they're like, okay, so are we playing a game first or are we talking first? Like, well, first session, we're going to get a game out. Okay? Because that's really with play, that's how you get to know them and that's how they get to know you. And so I really try to make them fun, bring them in, take down the walls a little bit, the nervousness a little bit, get to know them a little bit better, build rapport, and then we go from there.
Well, mate, you're amazing, Lindsay. You've absolutely filled my heart up. I just believe you're doing such great work, and
Thank you.
like I said, I've done this stuff. I've been through a lot of this stuff, so I can tell that you're absolutely next level at what you do. You're a beautiful woman, but you're an amazing human being, and a very, very intelligent one. So I really enjoyed this, Lindsay, so much. Like I said, I'd speak to you all day if I could. There's so much to unwrap here. I hope that you'll come back on again. As for the people one more thing. Do you
Yeah.
do like online counseling, like for people who might resonate with everything you said, which I believe will be a lot of people, but like say live in Australia or, you know, yeah.
Well, we do have to if we're licensed in Florida, we have to practice in Florida. Now, I could get licensed in Australia. If I got licensed in Australia, then I could do therapy there. So really it's about where the need is and then getting licensed there just to make sure that we are staying within the bound of our ethics because different places have different ethical laws and rules and things like that. But we do virtual therapy in Florida. And then our physical practice is in Lutz, Florida, which is a tiny kind of subset of Tampa, Florida. And we do therapy, and then we also do psychological evaluations to help people as well find direction and answers for different things they're going through. But if somebody's coming from a different area, a different state or different place, psychologytoday.com, I'm not sure if it's international, but in the United States, it's a really good listserv where people can find psychologists in the area. They can choose the specialties that they need. They can choose their insurance if they like, or no insurance at all, virtual or in person. So I like to encourage psychologytoday.com for someone that's looking. Our website, if you're in Florida, is www.findinghopewellnesscenter.com. And we do have people with space. So sorry, Australia, but hey, I'm happy to talk with you this way and be able to give as much hope as I can and provide people with tools from here. So thanks for providing this avenue, for people that are there to be able to hear it.
We're heartbroken, but we know, Lindsay, that now we know what we're looking for. So
Yeah.
absolutely, thank you so much, Lindsay. My
Yeah.
daughter, who has no problem, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have anxiety because she tells me what to do all the time, has told me that I've got to go. So, been absolutely amazing having you, Lindsay. I hope you'll come back again. Guys, if you want to know more about Lindsay, her details are down the bottom here. This is the 50 Entrepreneurs in 50 Days Abundance Mission. Um, Thank you, Lindsay, for your time and for the changes that you're making to people's lives.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me and doing this. I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
You're welcome. It's been a privilege. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Lindsay.
Thank you so much.